Hello YouTube and Patreon, this is Nathan P. Butler, and this is our project update for the month of September 2021. Got some things here to note specifically for the Patreon folks in relation to A Saga on Home Video 2nd Edition here, so if you're a backer over on Patreon or are considering it, make sure you pay attention here in just a moment when we get into that. It's been kind of a busy month from a book standpoint, not a very busy month in terms of other content like stuff on YouTube, but we will get to that. First, before we even dive into the Patreon thanks stuff, let me say congratulations to Mark Herleman and Jim Lehane. Mark and I did Star Wars Beyond the Films for quite a while as a podcast. It's the podcast I was on the longest in my stint as the longest-running continuous Star Wars podcaster, at least until my retirement in the last couple of years. And Jim stepped in when I retired to sort of take the reins so that it's now Mark and Jim. And just recently, Screen Rant did an article on basically the top 10 Star Wars podcasts for fans. And not only did Star Wars Report wind up on the list, which is sort of the parent show on the network that Star Wars Beyond the Films is with, and Cloud City Casino is with, and so on. But Star Wars Beyond the Films was ranked #1, which is awesome. So congratulations to Mark and Jim. See, I knew you'd find new heights when you got rid of that dead weight that was dragging you down. Me! So congratulations, guys. It is well earned. So moving on, let's talk Patreon here. As you know, I have a Patreon set up. I've had it for a while now, and basically there are 3 tiers over there. All 3 tiers get sort of an acknowledgement. They call it the Travelers through the Butlerverse, Denizens of the Butlerverse, and then Nobility of the Butlerverse. But all 3 tiers, the $1, $5, or $10 tier, wind up getting thanks in these videos, with the idea being that the official reward is getting thanked in the credits to these videos. But I make it a point to still say all the names out loud while it is a manageable number. I'm not sure what an unmanageable number would be, so I still try to say them out loud each time. But also would get a credit on the Patreon credits sort of thank you page in A Saga on Home Video 2nd Edition when it is published. That is now going to be a 3-volume set, so it actually means getting that thanks in 3 separate publications. Volume 1, 2, and 3 of A Saga on Home Video 2nd Edition. Sort of a collective work now, as we'll talk about again later. So, I've said before that there is going to need to be a cutoff at some point for where, okay, I've got to stop collecting names to put into that thanks page because I'm getting close enough to publication. I want to be able to just put the file in when it's ready and not have to worry about scrambling to add even more names to that list. So, here is how we are going to do that. If you are someone who wants to get their name in the Patreon thanks page of A Saga on Home Video 2nd Edition, then you need to have been a Patreon supporter at any of the 3 levels, patreon.com/NathanPButler, by the end of October 2021, the end of next month. Okay? That will be the cutoff. And then at the beginning of November, they will process the Patreon payment stuff, and I will then get ready to put all those names, those new names that have been added since the last time I did it, onto that list. Bear in mind, you do need to be someone who has been an actual supporter. If you jump into the Patreon, into one of the levels so your name pops up, but then you back out before there is ever any charge, so you've never actually done the financial support that Patreon is designed for, no, your name will not be in the book. It'll show up as 0, so I'll know that that was kind of what you did there. I've seen some people try to do that before. So, just know that. If you want to jump in on the Patreon, we'll get into what you actually get when I talk about the different levels and thank everybody here. But if you are interested in that still, if you're interested in having your name in print in all 3 volumes, in print and ebook form, because that's the plan, is print and ebook, for Saga on Home Video 2nd Edition, you basically have a little over a month to do that. After October 31st, we are cutting it off because I need to be able to prepare the final print pages for the book. And I'm still hoping for the end of this year, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, so you have been warned. If you're still trying to do that, I am going to update the Patreon page to note that cutoff as well. After that, the benefit will be just sort of the thanks here for that lowest tier, There's always a chance there might be a third edition of the book, but I doubt it, or some type of like supplement later, but I doubt it. But if there were, we would then do the same thing all over again for anybody all the way since the beginning of the Patreon. So, first let me thank those who are backers over there on Patreon in that Travelers Through the Butlerverse group. That's the $1 tier who gets all those thanks that I pointed out both in the videos and for the book. That is Kai Jacoby, Bon Linez, Travis Cook, Caleb Owens, Justin Richard, Preston Ellis, Jeremy Goss, Ben Abrams, Michael Torson, Jacob Kapoor, Tony Jenkins, Kevin Kriener, and Austin Pierce. Then we have the denizens of the Butlerverse. These are the folks who get that reference, right, get those thanks, but also get access to those audio commentaries that I put together. At this point, we're nearing the end of the Clone Wars. I'll get into what exactly has been released recently and what's coming next here in a moment. But we are nearing the end of the Clone Wars in the commentaries. The next big commentary series looks like it's going to be Rebels. So we have the context and a little bit of looking back on things. But I may do a series of short commentaries as like a bonus on Visions. Haven't quite decided yet, but that seems like that might be a thing to do. The problem with that is that's more like just a reaction type of thing because I am not at all into anime, so I don't have the context to really talk about any of the anime context. I can only talk about it in a, oh, that was cool, or hey, what the hell was that type of context there. But I might. It's something that I'm considering depending on how far ahead I get in recording for Clone Wars. But the denizens of the Butlerverse are Story Mode, Craig Clayton, Matt DeRochers, Travis Taylor, Walker Langstrat, Joey Zitzman, Stephen Malicia, Robert Medina, Bobby Craig, Jeremiah Mustard, and Jason Hunt. And Story Mode reminds me, also from a cutoff standpoint, if you are someone who has done the Patreon and you've only done it, say, under a pseudonym, like Story Mode, I can't imagine that's the real first and last name, or if you've only done it under, say, a first name, then you need to make sure that I have your accurate information of how you would be named, your name, if you want it to be anything other than first name and or a username type thing, by October 31st. So Story Mode, if you want to be listed as Story Mode, that's fine. It'll be Story Mode in quotes. But if you want to be listed by your name, you're going to need to let me know by October 31st what your actual name is. Using that same cutoff there just to make it easier for everybody. Then finally, we have the nobility of the Butlerverse. These are the folks who are doing that $10 tier. These are the folks who get the commentaries, they get all the thanks and everything, but they also get an exclusive Q&A video every single month. Typically, what I'm finding is that along with other questions, usually that's where I give my thoughts because people will ask about things like new Star Wars programs, new MCU stuff, and that sort of thing. So I would imagine that the one that's coming up in October is probably going to be the one where folks ask my thoughts on Star Wars Visions. I think in the last one we dealt with a little bit of what if so far. We've dealt with Loki, we've dealt with WandaVision. Those tend to come up a lot in those Q&As. And because they're covered there, I don't see a need to cover them separately in some other form. So the nobility of the Butlerverse include Joe Belite, Connor Steyerman, Jeff Rabjohns, Matthew Hardesty, Kyle Pellegrini, Innes, Chrono Keeper, who is Jonathan Confer, who helpfully puts his name in parentheses there. See, username and real name. Sam Howard, Andrew Bettis, and Benjamin Handelman. Now, the last of these project updates was uploaded on August 25th. Since then, we have had 2 new commentaries released, as one would expect, on the 1st and 15th of the month here. For the first, it was Bound for Rescue, the episode of the Clone Wars, and on the 15th, it was A Necessary Bond. So those 2 audio commentaries, those are MP3 files you download or you stream. You just turn on the episode of the Clone Wars, you listen for me to count down 3, 2, 1, play. You hit play at the moment that I say play, and then as you watch, you can essentially watch right along with me as I do a commentary for the full episode. And at this point, we've got those for the film, for all of Season 1, all of Season 2, all of Season 3, all of Season 4, and now most of Season 5. And we're heading towards the end of 5, then into 6 and 7, and Clone Wars will be done. Speaking of stuff that's been released, though, I should note that we also had the Nobility of the Butlerverse Q&A video for the month, released on September 5th, and that was our 45th of those. And yes, if you were to jump into that tier on Patreon, you can go back and watch any previous ones. It's not just a matter of the ones since you joined. Same thing with the commentaries. You jump in now, and basically you have access to, let's see, Necessary Bond was number, what, 97? You would have access to 97 Clone Wars commentaries, plus 4 commentaries for all 4 collected volumes of Forces of Destiny if you jumped in for $5. Pretty sweet deal there if you like my stuff. Of course, if you don't, why are you watching this, for the love of God? Don't you have things better to do? Get off your life, people, please. Probably shouldn't be saying that, because some people will be like, oh my God, I am wasting my life watching this guy. I'm out of here. But thanks for sticking around if you have. That brings us into what is coming for Patreon next month. It will be the first 2 episodes of the Droids arc, which is Secret Weapons and A Sunny Day in the Void, which is awful. But I finally got the thing recorded for it. That brings us to November, when we'll have Missing in Action and Point of No Return. I'm actually going to update Missing in Action. The last time I got a chance to record earlier this week, I recorded a little blurb because Gregor appeared in Bad Batch, but at the time that I recorded the Missing in Action episode, he hadn't shown up in Bad Batch yet, so we didn't know that was going to be the case. So I've added a little addendum that I'm going to add into that episode before it's released, so it's done and scheduled, but I'm going to tweak it so it's not officially done and scheduled anymore, I guess. But Point of No Return will finish out that arc on November 15th. On December 1st, we will have the commentary for Revival that kicks off the Shadow Collective arc. I just recorded that earlier this week. So that is recorded, needs to be edited and gotten ready. And then stuff that isn't recorded yet, but I know is coming. December 15th, we'll have the second episode of the Shadow Collective arc, and then January we'll knock out the last 2 pieces of that arc. And then February, March, that's going to be Ahsoka walking away from the Jedi Order, and that whole arc, which gets us into Season 6 by April, which is pretty cool. Really kind of barreling down on the end of the Clone Wars here, finally. And, of course, there'll be a new exclusive Q&A for the Nobility of the Butlerniverse in October, so if you are a member of the Nobility of the Butlerniverse, make sure to check out the September 2021 collection thread for questions. Add your questions there. I will use them in the video in October. And boy, oh boy, that's a lot of information early on here. Thankfully, the rest of the video should go somewhat quickly, at least this middle section about YouTube, because there's not much to talk about. For YouTube, there's only been a few episodes released from the Star Wars Home Video Library since the last update. I want to say it was 6 episodes. We had episode 420, which was the Turkish Revenge of the Sith VCD. We had episode 421, which is the Australian Ewok Telemovies DVD. Episode 422 was the very first UK Laserdisc release of The Empire Strikes Back, finishing out that trilogy, essentially, just as a Turkish dubbed VCD of Revenge of the Sith finished out that trilogy. Then 423 and 424 were kind of a package deal. 423 looked at the 2008 regular trilogy DVD sets from the UK, and then 424 looked at the HMV exclusive versions of the same. And then we had a supplemental episode, episode 138.1, which looked at the new Blu-ray release of the previously released sort of fan-made documentary Elstree 1976 to compare that Blu-ray release with the earlier one. Spoiler alert, they're the same except the packaging and the label. But not a whole lot otherwise yet from the Star Wars Home Video Library. I do have a couple of things I need to watch through and do a little research on before I do another episode. And then I have one thing I'm hoping to acquire soon. So, I mean, there's a few things I could do episodes on soon that aren't sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel and kind of looking at, hey, let's talk Thumb Wars or George Lucas and Love, and kind of stray into stuff that some fans have in their collections as Star Wars parodies, but which are not fitting of the parody rules we've talked about really before here. But I might dig into those. I've got a feeling that I'll need to be finishing up some of those top whatever lists soon to be able to continue pushing out more content with that, because there's just not a steady stream of new releases. For what it's worth, I think that the thing that I'm going to try to acquire soon will probably be the last major thing that I'm going to acquire with an eye towards including it in the book. So we're getting to the point where that's pretty close. Speaking of which, the book. That's the big thing here. The last few months, I keep showing you this 3-ring binder where I had done a giant printout of the current working files of all 3 volumes of the book, and have been slowly doing a hand editing process as I'm also adding more stuff and writing as I go. Here's an update on that binder. It's empty. Done! The hand edit process that has been going on for months has finally concluded for this particular editing pass. So, where do things stand right now? I have a to-do list right now. The to-do list is relatively short. There's a handful of pictures I'm going to take today. There's the one item I'm trying to acquire that if I acquire it, I'll need to get pictures of. There is one thing I actually have on the way to me right now It's not Star Wars, but it's going to be illustrative for the book. When I first start talking about Blu-ray and HD versus SD, one of the things I talk about is sort of a second format war, so to speak, between HD, DVD, and Blu-ray, and how Star Wars didn't really pick a side until the winner had already kind of been decided with Blu-ray. But I realized that in the John Williams set, I've got a copy of Superman the movie from 2006 on Blu-ray. There was an HD DVD equivalent of that, so I grabbed one of those for cheap off of eBay so I can do a side-by-side quick comparison to kind of visually illustrate that particular format war within the history of home video, despite the fact that Star Wars didn't have any HD DVD releases. So that is one thing that's coming. It's little stuff like that that I'm dealing with right now. But I have a small to-do list like check on such and such. I do want to go through my collection again, take some pictures of just how my shelves are arranged and kind of use that to check off what's been covered and what has not. Make sure there's nothing else I need to add that are little things, like I need to check some VHS releases to make sure there weren't like little advertising booklets in them to check. Like say 1977 or 1997, excuse me, had one that I don't think I've touched on yet, but most of the advertising little pieces I've touched on. Just little stuff like that. Not a lot of research to do with it. It's just a matter of getting the time to do it. My hope is that can be done relatively soon, and I'll be able to start printing out chapters, probably individually this time, to go in and basically, quote-unquote, lock them. To say, okay, this chapter is just done. I don't need to touch it at all anymore. It's ready to go. Once I get all the chapters in a volume fully ready to go, the next step then is designing the cover. I have an idea for what I want to do with the cover. I haven't really started messing around with it too much yet, because if I want it to be a wraparound cover, the actual dimension for width is going to be determined by the number of pages, because you have to account for the width of the spine in that wraparound cover image. So haven't really touched that yet. Hopefully that'll go pretty quickly once I do, though. But yeah, I mean, we're in a really good place with this. I still find myself sitting back wondering whether this is going to be 2021, because, I mean, as fast as work is going, we've only really got October, November, December left. And that's going to need to be me finishing up any last-minute stuff, doing another pass-through to lock the chapters as I go, getting the print files ready to go, which mainly is just moving images around if need be and that sort of thing so the spacing works right. So that none of the pages have giant gaps at the bottom. I'm going to have to go through and, again, make the covers, and then presumably do a test run, even once the files are ready, a test run to actually have a copy printed and sent to me so I can double-check and make sure that looks good before it actually goes into release. My hope still is end of the year, but it may be just barely into 2022. But I'm hoping for this year. It really just depends on how productive I can be. I mean, Thanksgiving break should be nice and productive, but that's really the only break that I've got. Otherwise, it's, you know, working when my son is going to sleep, or it's working on stuff on the weekend, or it's being up early and working on stuff. It's just, it kind of depends. But yeah, the biggest recent hurdle was getting through this whole thing. And it's looking great. I haven't done another, like, count of pictures or anything like that, or even a count of page type stuff. I will do that again probably by the time we do another one of these, but that's going to probably require me to go ahead and do the printout, because that's how I usually count. I don't count on the computer screen. I just do click, click, to count as I go through. But it's a lot. It's a lot of pictures and a lot of pages. Across the 3 volumes, but I think you'll be pleased with what you eventually see if you're into that sort of thing. So, that's the month here. So with that, I guess we will wrap this up here. My thanks again to all of you who are backers over on Patreon, and all of you who might be soon. Just remember, if you do want to have your name in the thanks in a Saga on Home video, you do need to make sure that you are a Patreon supporter by October 31st. So that when it then processes at the beginning of November, you are included within that. I will use that to build it up. Same thing, though, same deadline. If you have been going by a first name and you want your last name included, or even going by a pseudonym of some kind and you want to have a nom de plume, and you want to have your real name used as the thanks there. Otherwise, yeah, work continues apace. I don't expect to record a whole lot of From the Star Wars Home Video Library stuff in the very near future, so don't expect a whole lot of those within the next month, I would imagine, unless I finally get ready to do another of those top whatever videos. There's just not a lot to show yet. And one of the things I want to show, like I want to show the AFI 100 Years, 100 Movies set, but I need to actually watch that entire series somehow when I get time, because I want to be able to pick out which episodes include what Star Wars topics and that sort of thing. So I don't know if that'll be within the next month or not. My primary focus when I have free time, aside from these update videos and the Q&A videos recorded for Patreon, and the Patreon commentaries, which I do at a different time of day. It's usually at night when everybody's asleep. Those are the primary focus right now of making sure to get those done. I've also been wondering, in case you've listened this far, is there anything else you might find interesting to hear at the end of one of these episodes? Like I've had somebody ask, would you want to include something like you used to do with some of your podcasts, which is like, what are you reading or playing or whatever right now? I thought that might be an interesting inclusion, especially since it's quick. So let me know if that sounds interesting to you. I'll go ahead and do that now, and then you can tell me if there's other topics I should quickly add, or if this is completely useless. So before we go, what am I reading right now? I am currently in the middle of reading The Wheel of Time. I am in book 8. I have not read the prequel yet. I'll read that after book 10. Really, really enjoying it so far. I was someone who read Tolkien for Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, and Silmarillion. Never again. Never again. Do not like that writing style. I like Silmarillion more than I like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, though, from a reading standpoint. I really do like the writing style of Robert Jordan for The Wheel of Time, though. The third-person limited perspective tends to be my thing, unless it's first-person like the Joe Ledger books or the Dresden Files type books. So I'm in the middle of reading that, and slowly but surely on the side, reading through new Star Wars stuff that has just been piling up, like the newest High Republic, like teen book, whatever it's called. I've still got to read that anthology from the anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back, so I'm still kind of working through those. But most of the time when I'm reading, which is usually as I'm going to bed at night, it's on the Kindle, and it is Wheel of Time. What am I watching at the moment? I'm keeping up with Titans. We are almost done watching Star Wars Visions. I'm about to probably watch The Stand on Paramount+. I guess I just finally saw all the John Wick movies recently. Let's see. What am I playing? In terms of board games, I just got the finished advance copy because I was an honorary producer of Tiny Epic Dungeons, so I'm going to be playing some more of that in the very near future. Also just had Ignite, the deck building game, arrive, which is enormous. And I've been playing a bit of Descent Legends of the Dark, which is the new one that uses the app. From a video game standpoint, I just started playing Innocence of Plague Tale, which was free with PlayStation Plus for PS5. I've been playing Hades quite a bit, and still have not beaten Returnal. I've gotten to basically one of the 3 confrontations that must all be done in one run on Returnal in biome number 5, and get my ass kicked every single time. So at least I'm in that second, act of Returnal, but I haven't gotten very much further beyond that point. I'm also trying to finish up Spider-Man Miles Morales when I freaking remember that I still need to finish the game. I'm about halfway through, I think, of that one. So yeah, that's what's going on here. Thank you all for your interest in the projects and everything. I will catch you in a month. And again, if there's any thoughts on stuff to include there at the end like that, just let me know. And Patreon folks, just remember what I've said a couple times here. Thanks and have a good month.